Hello and welcome to lesson 3 of week 7. In this lesson, we are going to look at the attributes that the form element takes and other attributes for other form elements. My name is Mildred. So far, we have seen how to create a form. We have looked at the various form elements and we have looked at the various types that we can use for the input form element. The first thing we're going to look at here are the attributes that the form element takes, and the first attribute we are going to look at is the action attribute. The action attribute takes the value of the processing page. So when this form is submitted, we want to specify the page that processes this information. By default, it is processed on the same page, and if we want to send this to another page, let's say for instance we have something like case information.py, which means that we have a Python script which is on the server side that looks through this information and processes this information either before storage into the database or for further action. But the action attribute takes a value of the address of the processing page or same page if nothing is specified. But we need to be able to send this information to the action page using an HTTP method. We specify the method attribute and it takes the value of either get or post. If you want to send information that is not sensitive, that is not so large, that you can bookmark, you can use the method get. If you want to send sensitive information, large information, you use the method post. These are the two HTTP methods that we are going to be using to send information for processing. So once you have things like a search button, you are going to be sending data or searching data that is not sensitive. It is sent to the URL, and so everybody can see the information that you are sending on the URL. It can be bookmarked, and so you don't want to use the get method for any sensitive information. We have other attributes that the form tag takes. We have things like the accept char set, which we use to specify the character set that it should accept. We also have things like autocomplete, which we can set to on or off because it is Boolean. When you set autocomplete to off, it means that anytime that a user tries to enter information on the form, it should not auto-suggest any information that the user has previously entered on that system, or auto-suggest should be completely off. So we have several of these attributes. I want you to research them, see the attributes, and as we design our form and as we go further, we are going to be naming these attributes and using them one after the other. Let's look at attributes that we can specify on other form elements. Let's say we want the length of the characters for the first name to be maximum of 10. We have a max length attribute that we can specify and use 10 as the value. So which means that the maximum number of characters that the user can type into this box will be 10. And when I go to my page and refresh, when I type and I want to keep typing, it stops at the 10th character and I can type greater than 10 characters in that field. We also have another attribute which is required, which we can specify to make sure that the user types something into the field before the submit button is selected. So if I try to submit without filling that value, it tells me to please fill in this field. So we can use the required attribute to make a particular field required, and the user must enter values into that field. And just so you know that most of these attributes enforces these constraints on the field, but it is not as secured because there are ways that users can actually circumvent this on their system. And so even when we have the required at the front end, we also put that during form processing. If the field is required, we want this processing script to make sure that the value is entered in addition to the front end constraints that we have added. When you do not want the form to be validated before submission, and we are going to see the application of this and when this is useful as we go ahead. We can use a no validate attribute like this, and this is a boolean also, so when you specify the attribute no validate, it just makes sure that the form entries are not validated when they are sent for processing. Another attribute we can use is the autofocus attribute. So if I put autofocus, let's say I put it on the unique ID, it means that once this page loads, instead of the focus to be on the first name, it should be on the unique ID, so that the users will start typing from the unique ID. So when you use an autofocus attribute, it's going to put the focus of the cursor on that field that has the autofocus once the page loads for the first time. We also have the step attribute. If we put the step for number type, let's say we want the users to enter a number and we want the numbers to be multiples of 5, for instance. So let's say I use an input type of number somewhere here. I'll just illustrate this. Then I use step, and I want it to have multiples of 5, so I'll put step equals 5. When I go to that form and I refresh the page, I have the number type, and when I try to select, it gives me multiples of 5. So you can use step to select how many intervals will you have between two numbers on your input field. Let's say you want the size of the width of the input field to be 5 characters long. I'm going to use this for the unique ID. I'll put size is equal to 5. And so when I go back to that form and I refresh, I will have this will be the length of 5 characters. If we use the size on the select element, we can decide that we want 3 of these values to be visible at once, and we can use the size is equal to 3 here. So there are different applications of this. When I save this, I go to my form and I refresh. I will have 3 of these options visible. The select one, which is disabled, the heterosexual, and the homosexual. For these attributes, we call the multiple attributes. When you want the user to be able to select more than one option, you use the multiple attributes. And so the system will now allow the user to select more than one option. But without the multiple attributes, only one option can be selected. We have things like the form attributes, where we can specify a form attribute and put the name of the form. So in the event where we have an input field outside of the form tag, let's say we have an input here, and we want to link these inputs to the form, we want to specify what form these inputs belong to, we are going to put the form attribute, and we are going to put the value of the ID attribute on the form. So let's see. This form doesn't have an ID attribute, so we can put an ID here is equal to case form. And so when I use the form attribute on the inputs that is outside of the form tag, I'm going to put the form is equal to case form. So these are the attributes that you will find useful in your assignments. There are more attributes. I want you to research and read extra to see the ones that we did not cover, but these are the most of them. And this is where this week ends. Thank you, and see you next week.